Hi, everybody. That's how people in Chengdu, China sometimes play happy birthday to themselves. And I'd just like to welcome all of you to our weekly program and thank you so much for coming. I couldn't think of a nicer 90th birthday present than being here on this wonderful weekly program with my own three wonderful children, now all grown ups, and still my wonderful children, but now I'm their father and friend, or whatever you call it. And just before we start, since he's staying up past his bedtime, in addition to Alana, our firstborn, Adira, our secondborn, and Adam, our thirdborn, Adira has a wonderful young man named Oliver Amram, and he's supposed to be in bed, but he wanted to stay up just to wave to everybody. Oliver's 7 years old, and we're trying to keep up with him. So, Oliver, thank you for being here. Can you say a few words to the worldwide Zoom audience? Well, he's a man of few words. And we're going to begin now by having a terrific video, which our daughter Adira made when we were doing something together. All three of my kids, I'm proud to say, have their own music, their own lives, and their own generational way of doing stuff. They're not forced by me to become children of the beatniks or any of that junk. So, with all due respect to branding, they're like all of you who are watching and every human being on the earth, their own individual person. And that's the way we're all start off being and stay until we're told to become something else. So we want to thank Anthony Demarbieu for coming back again and being here. And of course, the producer, Pamela Dickerson, without whom this never would have happened. And our wonderful guests, the Amram family, and the great Jim Canary, keeper of the scroll, and Norton Wisdom, visual artist, and all our surprise guests like Hassan Medley, whom I just see right now, who's a terrific professor of literature and just got a letter from Joyce Johnson and told her how much you loved her work. But let's begin by seeing Adira reading from Jack Kerouac's work, and I was accompanying her as I did with Jack, trying to honor Adira for doing it, and Jack for writing this beautiful description of an evening in the Rockies just on his way to Denver. And I'll repeat that. If we'd be kind enough to see the video of Adira reading what we call On the Roof of America, a marvelous description. Here it is.
I'm going to be reading a section from On the Road, and this section is Children of the American Bop Night.
Oh.
Once there was Louis Armstrong blowing his beautiful top in the muds of New Orleans. Before him, the mad musicians who had paraded on a Then there was swing and Roy Eldridge, vigorous and virile, blasting the horn for everything it had in waves of power and logic, and subtly leaning to it with glittering eyes and a lovely smile, and sending it out to broadcast the jazz world. Then had come Charlie Parker, a kid in his mother's woodshed in Kansas City, blowing his taped-up alto among the logs, practicing on rainy days, coming out to watch old Hot Lips Page and all the rest. Charlie Parker leaving his home and coming to Harlem and meeting the mad Thelonious Monk and the even madder Gillespie. Charlie Parker in his earlier days when he was flipped and walked around in a circle while playing. Somewhat younger than Lester Young, also from KC, that gloomy saintly goof in whom the history of jazz was wrapped. For when he held his horn high and horizontal from his mouth, he blew the greatest. But as he got older and his hair grew longer, and as he got lazier and stretched out, his horn came halfway down, till finally it came all the way down. And today, as he wears his thick-soled shoes that he can't feel the sidewalks of life, his horn is held weakly against his chest, and he blows cool and easy get-out phrases. Here were the children of the American bop night.
Beautiful. And that was the Dira reading in Central Park, New York. And the great Candido, who just passed away 2 days ago, 99, was playing the conga drums. I had no idea. I thought they were going to show on the Roof of America. That was called Children of the American Bop Night. And Adira, that was just so terrific. And I want to thank you for that beautiful reading. I'd forgotten that we'd ever done that. And when people see your own brilliant satirical kind of expression in your terms for your generation of what you are saying about the current or formerly current music business, that's so amazing and so different. But that was also just so beautiful, and I thank you for that great reading. Just before we have Adira speak and show her wonderful video and talk about what she is, not only what she's done, but what she's doing on her own, I'll begin with the readings as we do every week from the book Offbeat Collaborating with Kerouac. And we're going to start, as we always do, where we left off last week. And last week I described going over and hearing Jack rapping out a whole, what could have been a book, while I was copying my Kaddish for my sacred service. And when I said to him, gosh, Jack, I wish I'd had a tape recorder, he said, well, that's what I try to do every time that I'm writing, as if the reader could feel I'm speaking directly to them. And I can never quite do it. But of course, that's what Mozart and Beethoven and Rembrandt and all the great artists of the past always did. They spoke to you, to us, which is beautiful. When I woke up the next morning after our evening, I was full of energy, and I called up Jack. Oh, mon Dieu, oh my gosh, what a hangover I've got. What time is it? Asked Jack. Time to start writing our cantata, I said. Where's your new true love? She had to go to her day job, he said. She really is beautiful, sensitive and compassionate. I think I'm in love again. Tell me what your new chef d'oeuvre, masterpiece, is going to be all about, in detail. I recounted to Jack what I had told him the night before. I explained that the cantata I was going to write with him, A Year in Our Land, would celebrate the 4 seasons in America, and that each of the 4 seasons would be set in a different part of the country. Jack again suggested about 50 books to read, and I painstakingly wrote the names of all those books down. I told him how I knew that this would happen someday when I left Dodie Miller's apartment after visiting him there nearly 5 years ago in 1959. I reminded him of the idea of the baseball opera he had thought of and how that triggered my imagination. We'll still do that someday, said Jack, and then I'll make you assistant manager of the Pawtucket team. Now get to work, Davy. For 2 weeks, I read and took notes, like looking for a needle in a haystack, or, as he used to always say, diamonds in the sidewalk. Pardon me, I'm going to put on my reading glasses as befits someone about to hit the big 9-0 in 36 hours. Oh, and now, thank you. Continuing where I left off. Uh, I thought about Jack as I composed the cantata. All the conversations about our retrospective travels, all adventures, dreams, favors, smells, sounds, and the people he met and wrote about, and all of the places I had been, the people that I had played with, fortunately, and for all these people inspired me. I thought about the great times we had together as I composed and orchestrated the cantata. Sometimes, when Jack would visit, I would sit at the piano, pounding away and croaking out as best I could the passages for the chorus and the soloists, and trying to sing some of the virtuosic interludes composed for the orchestra alone. Occasionally, after a few drinks, Jack would join in. He had such a remarkable ear, he could remember portions that I had sung to him over the phone or played in a previous visit, and sing them to me even though I could only play a rough outline of what these portions of the cantata would sound like. He was like a phenomenal person with a phenomenal memory of conversations extended to his encyclopedic knowledge of music. Anything he heard once, he could be instantly recalled in his memory. We always had such a great time together and had so much fun. Jack remained a purist and an idealist for all of his life. Even though we always ended up laughing, I could see and feel the pain he was experiencing. This was the fall of 1964. The new pop culture had become a colossus that seemed intent on simultaneously rewriting history while making a fortune for a handful of entrepreneurs. According to the New Order, no one over 30 was supposed to be trusted. We were informed that jazz was dead and that novels, symphonies, operas, and acoustic folk music of the world were now all irrelevant. Ironically, Jack was accused of being responsible for all of this while being called a redneck reactionary conservative because he refused to go along with it. At the same time, he was reviled by the literary establishment as some kind of a Cro-Magnon Philistine whose only talent was his ability as a speed demon at the typewriter. As the despised king of the Beat Generation, a title he abhorred, he was held responsible for the self-indulgent excesses of the 1960s. I love America, Davy, he used to say. Our country created jazz. It gives a place to come to for the wretched of the earth to seek a haven. All of our families came here to join the Indian people in their great circle. Our lost continent, from Canada to Mexico, is precious. I know what's wrong with America, but how can they blame this self-hatred and exploitation of innocent kids by greedy merchants on Jack Kerouac? Didn't anyone ever read my books? He felt betrayed by some of his old friends who, because of his refusal to join the turn on, tune in, drop out LSD brigade, or because of their jealousy of his past successes on their own craziness, they were no longer able to support his needs to be appreciated, respected, and loved for the generosity of his spirit and the enduring value of his work. He felt that they were no longer concerned with his vulnerability and the hurt he felt by critical rejection of the most important thing in his life was his writing. I loved his work. all the musicians I knew felt the same way. He was the towering figure of our so called Beat generation. All of us knew that, and he didn't need a Beat generation to justify his work. He was as eloquent and original a voice in American letters as Mark Twain, Walt Whitman, Carson McCullers, Ernest Hemingway, William Faulkner, or F. Scott Fitzgerald. We had long since stopped reading and jamming together in public. It was too stressful for Jack. We would go to the Lucian Carr's house and his home to play music till dawn, or sneak back into the Cafe Figaro, the darkest part of the cafe, and do a little impromptu improvising for college kids who thought we were two over the hill Greenwich Village nutcases, or we'd play at my place. I could always cheer him up, but I knew his road was a long one and it would be years before America would appreciate what a treasure he was to the world. I feared he would not live long enough to see his greatness appreciated. Even though I was 8 years younger, I was not sure in my heart of hearts that I would be around to see Jack get his due. But I knew that I was with someone whose work would endure forever. It had nothing to do with fame. Jack was unknown in 1956 when we first got together. It was not about celebrity or fashion. It had to do with being in the presence of greatness that was as pure and simple and brilliant as a bright, cloudless summer day at the beach. When you look back at the perfect blue in the ocean and the sun's glitter on a wave in the distance, almost being knocked over with the power of its reflection. In the late fall of 1965, as I was completing my cantata, A Year in Our Land, I had to put it aside for 4 months. I knew I could finish it easily because I had it in my head. I would only need 3 weeks of uninterrupted time in March of 1965 to finish and orchestrate the rest of the cantata and have it ready for its premiere in May. I had been called by ABC television to compose The Final Ingredient, an opera of the Holocaust that was to be a one-act opera that was only 56 minutes in length for a network television premiere in April of 1965. I got a place in New City, New York, in an empty cabin next to a 20-acre field with horses. My only company was a nest of rats that deserved a cleanup crew for anything left over from my homemade dinners. I worked around the clock, setting the libretto by Arnold Weinstein to music. The Final Ingredient was based on the true story of a group of prisoners in a concentration camp during World War II who held a clandestine Passover service while being held captive by their Nazi guards. It was a heartbreaking story. Arnold Weinstein somehow managed to create a libretto that made this horrendous experience uplifting. It made me reevaluate my own family's struggle to escape prosecution or persecution in the mid 19th century and escape to come live on this continent. When I spoke to Jack about the opera, he told me he would say some prayers for me and all who had perished. He also loved Arnold Weinstein's play Dynamite Tonight and Arnold's poetry. We all did. Along with Delmore Schwartz and Joel Oppenheimer, Arnold Weinstein was an icon in the Greenwich Village and Lower East Side community of artists. The three of them were fortunate that, like the children of Israel, they were left unlabeled when the plague of the beatnik myth tarred and feathered so many of us. It somehow seemed like just a higher power. Delmore, Joel, and Arnold all loved Jack's work, and we were all friends. I told Jack that I would get him a reel to reel tape of the opera when it was performed in April to add to his collection of my underground vegetarian hits, as we called them. All your stuff will be recorded someday, said Jack to me. Remember what you said to Jimmy Baldwin when he told you, always keep a carbon copy. Never throw away anything that you wrote. If it's beautiful, it will stay beautiful. I still can't get Visions of Cody published. Just stick to your guns. Keep working. Burn with that hard and gem like flame. I recall Jack recording of a live performance of Dirge and Variations by the Marlboro Trio that he had seen broadcast on a Sunday morning TV show. He loved chamber music as much as he loved jazz. Jack called me and told me that he liked it, and I sent him more recordings of my symphonic music and some great jazz sessions from my score for the Manchurian Candidate that were never used. In the film, they remained unrecorded. They did feature the great saxophonist Harold Land. I also sent him my score for Arthur Miller's play After the Fall, for which I had composed the music a year ago. In late February, Jack wrote me this short one-page letter from Florida. February 27th, 65. Dear Davy, playing the tapes. Neat. Who is the alto? Nice drums, bass too. Glad to see from New York Times you are getting along in your career. Opera for Israeli motif. See you sometimes in this spring in Old Manhattanose. Yours, Jack. Real Yiddish name, Jean-Louis Libre de Kerouac. I'll call you before I interrupt your Poulenc and Satie-like musical meditations on 6th Avenue. Nutty Jack. So little to say in letters anymore as one grows older. While I was finishing the work on the cantata, I completed rehearsals for the final ingredient, due to be broadcast nationally Sunday, April 11th, 1965. I called Jack and told him he could watch it on ABC network television. He sounded worn out, told me he'd be punched out in a bar, and that he was going to have to cut back on his drinking, but that he would watch the broadcast. We talked a week later, and he told me to tell Arnold Weinstein, who had written the libretto, that he thought he had done a great job for an almost invisible challenge, and that we should all get together in New York when he came next to pay a visit. Jack wasn't able to hear the world premiere of the cantata A Year in Our Land at Town Hall in 1965. When he came to visit, I read him the enthusiastic review from the New York Herald Tribune. Fantastique, said Jack. There's no way they could fit this into the Beat Generation dungeon. We'll get there yet, Davy. Let's plan that baseball and football oratorio. The next chapter, which I'll read a little bit of, is called Chapter 9, San Francisco Reunion. In the fall of 1965, I had finished my cantata Let Us Remember with a text by Langston Hughes. He was a poet who, along with Dylan Thomas, was a favorite of all musicians because of his flowing style that made you want to read him aloud. Like Dylan Thomas, you always knew what he was talking about. And he wrote from his own life experiences and made you feel it was part of your experiences as well. And like Jack, he was shunned by many of New York's ever-changing fashion-conscious arbiters who were only concerned with what was in and who was out. Fortunately, Langston knew, as Jack knew, that his writing for a worldwide audience was appreciated. Neither of them ever forgot their roots or the love they felt for their people and the love of sharing, that keen poetic sense that they had with others. Langston knew of the friendship I had with Jack and also understood what Jack was going through. Once they say they love you, you have to be prepared to deal what it's like when they hate you, said Langston. I learned a long time ago that when I'm referred to as a historic figure of the Harlem Renaissance who is now reduced to writing a newspaper column, that means I'm supposed to accept my demise. Fortunately, my physician agrees with me that I'm still very much alive. I live in Harlem. I'm bearing witness to what we did a long time ago. All the young kids working for me understand I'm an artist first and foremost who loves his people and loves this country that we helped to build. Our blood and tears are part of everyone's life. Without us, where would music, dance, poetry, sports, and a major part of our way of speaking English be? Like Jack, I'm a reporter of my time and place. He will always pay his dues for maintaining his French Canadian identity and his love of the Catholic Church. He refuses to be a white Uncle Tom for the New York City literary establishment. He also understands the destructive nature of well meaning people who fancy themselves as revolutionary are handing over the country to oppressive people by glorifying drugs and irresponsibility. I'm criticized from many for not being militant enough, even after spending my whole life working to open up the doors of understanding among all of us. It seems that any of us selected to be spokesmen are expected to be entertainers to an elite group who wish to keep us divided. Jack comes from the Whitman tradition of embracing and yay saying. His work embraces all of the continent that he writes about. Jazz is a sample of the understanding of all this that is so rare. He loves our music and he seems to understand it because he feels it. You can sense that in his writing, and he draws on his European roots. When you speak to Jack next, tell him to persevere and remember to keep his eyes on the prize. He must not allow himself to succumb to despair. We have to be strong to stay in this business. We have an obligation to fulfill. We have to be strong. Tell Jack to dig deep. In late October of 1965, I called up Jack in St. Petersburg, told him I was flying to San Francisco to attend rehearsals of the cantata and would look up mutual old friends. Tell them Jack is still writing and that I love and miss them all, and that I will be back when I can. Try and see Philip Lamantia and Howard Hart if they're around, and tell them we need a reunion to show how music poetry should be done. Call Ferlinghetti and find out how Neil and Carolyn and the kids are doing. I know Neil still visits her and sees them. He needs to get away, as I'm trying to, from all the illiterates who have no idea of who we were and are. When I saw him last summer, he was with a group of hangers on that treated him like a monkey on a string. I know Carolyn will survive. She's strong. But Neil is lost. He paused, and I could feel his sadness among the many, even despite of the many miles that separated us. Try and see someone, he said. I miss all those good times. I'll try, Jack, I said. I miss them too. I don't think I'll have much of a chance to find everybody or anybody because we have a lot of rehearsals. I want to make sure Langston's next text and my music come off the way they should. Langston sends his love to you and says, stay strong. Tell him I will, said Jack, and that I'll turn the other cheek to the Philistines. He laughed as he always did when he said this to me and others. Tell Langston to stick to his guns, and I'll stick to mine, and tell everyone I haven't had a drink in a week. I may visit Lowell while you're in San Francisco, and if I do, I'll go to Mass and say a special prayer for you, for Langston, and for your new work. Maybe they'll do a year in our land, and my portion of it, from the Lonesome Traveler that you set to music, will be heard west of the Rockies. Someday I know it will, I said. That's our secret weapon, to circumvent our detractors, said Jack. We can be spontaneous and throw it away and keep the same spontaneity when we write it down. And then the reader and the listener can feel us talking directly to them. Our genre complements the other. The one genre complements the other. Bach improvised fugues as well as writing them down. Homer scattered the Iliad and the Odyssey Someone else wrote it down for him. That's great, Jack, I said. I'm going to write that down. Be sure to remember that Jean Louis Libre de Kerouac told you this to inform the illiterate of what we are about, said Jack, chuckling. I ripped out a scribbled page from my torn address book and wrote it down. I got it, Jack, I said. If you consider an army of beatniks and poseurs at your concert, tell them to please read my books and listen to your music, and then look inside themselves to find their own beauty and to find their own creativity, and that LSD and the whole barbarian trip is a charade leading to a dead end. At least tell them to read Shakespeare and the Bible and listen to Bach at Charlie Parker. That's a promise, Jack, I said. I always do that anyway. I'm tired, Davy, said Jack. I love to stay here for my mother's sake. The climate's good for her. Say hello to her. She loves to hear you speak French. I talked to Gabrielle in French and made her laugh, as I always did. She told me that she was feeling better and that Jack was being a good boy, but he should tell all the people who come by day and night banging on the door to leave them alone in peace. I explained to her that this was nothing that Jack could help and that he was a great artist who was misunderstood. She told me how women were trying to take him away from her and that she was afraid he would run off with some tramp and leave her all alone. Jamais, I told her, never. Bon, tu es un vrai ami, she said. Good, you're a real friend. She asked me about Lenny Gross, whom she loved. He was the curly headed boy wonder editor whom Jack and I met in 1958 at Brooklyn College at our last ever public reading with Howard Hart and Philip Lamantia. He had visited their home in Northport, and like everyone else who ever met him, Gabrielle was crazy about him. Oh, le petit Lenny, il est adorable. That little Lenny, he's adorable. When are you getting married? She asked, suddenly breaking into English. When you find yourself a nice Jewish girl and have a family? You're not getting any younger, David. Soon, I hope, I said sheepishly. Maybe you'll find your wife in San Francisco, she said. There's a lot of single women out there, but don't marry a tramp. I won't, I promise, I said. Jack got back on the phone. Tell your mother I promise I won't marry a tramp, I said. If you do, I know she'll soon become a sainted angel, whispered Jack. I could hear Jack's mother screaming at him in French, wanting to know what he was saying to me that she couldn't hear. J'ai dit que Davy va trouver un ange. I said that Davy would find an angel, Jack said. I'll be looking, I said. God will provide you one, said Jack. Have a great trip. I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you too, I said. I arrived in San Francisco and met Paul Kresh, who had put together a whole program that included a concert performance of a ballet score of Judith by William Schumann, a work for narrator and orchestra, with Edward G. Robinson as the narrator. There was also another world premiere of a short evocative piece for trumpet and orchestra by Charles Morrow. The featured piece was the world premiere of the cantata I wrote with Langston Hughes called Let Us Remember. During a break in the rehearsals, I became friendly with a spaced out looking violinist. We talked about music for nearly an hour, and then I said, I told Jack Kerouac I was going to try to look up a bunch of people, but I have no idea where they live anymore. Herb Gold is the only one I know who stays in the same place and pays his rent. Everyone else is floating. I have a friend I'd like to see who's a fine composer, Morton Subotnick. I found his address somehow in my jumble of papers and don't know this street is in San Francisco. I showed Paul Kress the address. It's in Haight Ashbury, he said. A lot of Polish people live there, but it's becoming the new North Beach. You can score a lot of dope and meet a lot of wild chicks there. They're running around all over the place. I thanked him and took off to find Morton. When I finally found the building and rang the bell, there was no answer. I noticed quite a few young people dressed in homemade costumes that looked like they were auditioning as extra for a Civil War movie or a pirate film epic. Many of the women had long jackets and skirts that looked like they were made out of homemade velvet curtains with open blouses that made it difficult to look away. Many had long hair flowing down their backs, parted neatly in the middle, with flowers really placed over their heads like members of a water ballet in an old Esther Williams movie musical. Some were wearing thin, rimmed wire glasses. They seemed happy and content. Many of the young men had open necked shirts and bandanas like the old Errol Flynn costume movies, and some were sporting eye patches. They had long hair and were smiling and surprisingly cheerful. I had sensed that the old beatnik stereotype of what we were supposed to have been no longer was universally accepted as a fashion statement, at least not in this neighborhood. What a relief, I thought to myself. I'll have to call Jack and tell him that there's finally some young people who are not trying to look like beatniks. I could smell the aroma of pot being smoked out on the street. I suddenly saw what looked like my old basement apartment on 16th Street in Washington, D.C. from 1949 to 1952, only this present incarnation seemed to be some kind of an old bar and grill. I had no idea where I was at this point, having walked from Martin's apartment building for half an hour, soaking up the sights and sounds and ever present pot fumes. For some reason, I was drawn to this bar. I walked down a few steps and saw the dimly lit interior, squinting my eyes for focus. Well, look who's here, washed up all on shore. Miss McGillicuddy, shouted a voice that could only be Gregory Corso's. I squinted my eyes and saw Gregory, Peter Orlovsky, Allen Ginsberg, jazz pianist Freddie Redd, and actor Gary Goodrow, both in the cast of The Connection in New York and friends of mine from the first few weeks in the city when I came in 1955. I saw a tall, brooding figure gazing at me, bobbing his head and laughing. Of course, with your busy schedule trying to keep jazz alive and bringing Berlioz, Bach, and Bird to the uninitiated masses, you probably don't have time to search your one promising mind to activate the remaining brain cells rotted and destroyed by your youthful excesses and nights spent in ecstatic embrace with all those fine chicks that used to fill up whole cities before the heathen began their deprogramming of America's youth and leaving us high and dry, but never high enough to forget those golden days of big bands and open hearts and warm embraces that you certainly are in need of giving up, as I'm in need of preserving. So give old Neil a brotherly bebop hug. My God, I said, Cassidy. We gave each other a hug. Then I gave everybody at the bar a hug. This is like a bar mitzvah, said Gary Goodrow. Did you bring me a gift? Dave brought himself, said Freddie Redd. He brought the gift of himself. I'm playing a gig here in San Francisco later this week. His ESP told him I need a French horn player to sit in with me. So here you are, David, right on time. Did you pack your axe? A musician's lingo for did you bring your instrument? Always do, I said. Tell me where and I'll be there. I only have one night I'm busy. I told him I had just spoken to Jack a few weeks ago and asked them why and what they were doing here at 3 p.m. in an empty bar on a sunny day. We were driving around San Francisco with Neil at the wheel, and suddenly we decided to come here, said Alan. We hadn't been here in 12 years. This is a place we used to come to be with Jack when we weren't in the Mission District or North Beach. We ran into Freddie and Gary and invited them along. We were just drawn to this place for some kind of sentimental return for a time long gone. Like our man Marcel Proust's remembrance of things past, said Neil. But we're not lying in a cork lined room in gay Paris. We're here in San Francisco with an army of young girls waiting to be swept off their feet by the brilliance of our collective intellects and manly charms if we can get off our keisters and go back to the van and let me drive and pick up two angels of the night who happen to be waiting just for me to fill their lives with love and sensual satisfaction. Good, said Alan. We'll pick up Neil's two young friends and drive them over to Fisherman's Wharf. We're having a poetry reading tonight. You can play for us, David. It's the cast of Pull My Daisy visited 6 years later, said Peter Orlowski in a stentorian voice like an opera singer. Bring on the broads. How about some ladies for Gregory, said Corso to Neil. They don't know. I can immortalize them. Just be sure to keep yourself immortalized, said Gary Goodrow. None of us are in a rush to be immortalized yet. I'll drink to that, said Freddie Wed. I will too, I said, but first I want to drink to Jack. I ordered 7 ginger ales from the bartender, and we all raised our glasses. I'll drink to Jack too, said the bartender, pouring himself a tumbler full of Courvoisier brandy. The new generation you see out on the streets smoking all that reefer and is killing the bar business. But I'll join you in your ginger ale toast to Jack Kerouac anyway. Kerouac held up a mirror for Americans to make us see ourselves so we can learn to love each other again. He's a drinking man with a big heart. To Jack and all of us, I said, to Langston Hughes, who brought me here, and all of you for being here. We drank our ginger ales. Time to go, said Alan. I wish I could see Jack. He's angry with me. I can't get him to understand that the new consciousness and political implications of what he started no longer are relevant. He could make a fortune if he went out on the college circuit with us, and we all could hold hands with this new revolutionary spirit that's sweeping the country. He could be a real star. He could be an icon. He could be like a rock star. He just wants to be respected as a writer, I said. Of course, we all want that, said Alan somewhat testily. But that's not enough. This is a media culture. Marshall McLuhan and Timothy Leary are leading the way to a new consciousness. He has to let go of his old ways of thinking and be part of what's happening now. Jack will always be part of what's happening now, Alan, said Neil. He's the chosen one. He's the voice that will always be with him. He is a classic writer. Well, his books are all going out of print, said Alan. It's not enough to just sit at home looking after your mother and writing in a vacuum. Jack will never be in a vacuum, said Neil. His voice will always be heard. His words will be here when we are all gone. Well, we're still here now, so let's get moving, said Freddie Red. Let's see how much Neil remembers about the jazz scene and all that you guys forgot about if you ever dug it in the first place. Neil, you and Dave do some scat singing. Gary and I will be the rhythm section. See you in 12 years, boys, said the bartender. Every 12 years, I expect a reunion. Next time, bring Jack. Dave, carefully, Neil. Watch out. Drive carefully. The cops are getting mean. San Francisco's not what it used to be. Nothing ever is, said Alan. That's the definition of change. Things move on. And next week, we'll continue driving around the town of San Francisco in 1965 with Neil Cassidy at the wheel. And now we're so happy that before we have our what's called an intermission, we can have Adira come back, and she can introduce herself better than I ever could because she created it, not me. Something completely different than the video you saw of her reading Kerouac in Central Park with the jazz group, but rather her own amazing, brilliant, hilarious take on her dear and my ex sweetheart's Laura Lee, her mom. And the song is called Mom, and she'll tell you all about it. So, Adira, take it away.
Hello.
Hi, Adira. Welcome on
Hi.
Amram Reads Amram. It's so nice to see you.
Thanks for having me. Happy birthday, Dad.
Thank you so much, Adira. I don't want to hog your time because
it's okay, Dad.
I
It's
want to
okay.
hear you. That's enough of old pops for the next week. I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, yeah, I wrote this song about 10 years ago, maybe more than that. And yeah, I have a group called the Dear Amram and the Experience, and it's myself and two dancers, and this is one of our songs. I don't know how else you want me to introduce it.
And also
introduce it how you would how you want to introduce it.
No, however, Dad, this is all about you. This is what happened. I know how I'll introduce it. This is the kind of thing you make when David Amram is your dad.
hi guys, how's it going? Anthony
Hi.
here.
Hey, Anthony.
Really quick on that, the order that I had received the videos to be cut in actually starts with David and Dizzy Gillespie. So I'm not sure if we want to.
That Adira can read afterwards. No problem.
Do you guys can remember that really great introduction I gave then for later?
Fabulous.
Take two. Let me ask you a question, Anthony. While they're showing the Dizzy Gillespie video, can Adira be up next, and then I'll introduce that. That's what I wrote down.
Yeah. So how it was explained to me, they're all cut into one video. I didn't know that there were going to be stops in between, so they're sort of meant to play sequentially.
Okay, well, we can just stop after each one. That's what we requested. So when you see the end of it, you hear everybody applauding. Just stop it, and you could peek and see what's next, and then I'll rap away about something until you give me a signal what is next. You could just say, next we're going to hear something, or just name the name, and I'll introduce that.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Spontaneity always crushes disorganization and becomes the new plan. So this will be something that I did with Dizzy Gillespie at the birthday celebration, followed by a tribute to Thelonious Monk, the great a great pianist, in 1987 at the beautiful hall in Washington, D.C., and Constitution Hall. And the band was Dizzy, Walter Davis Jr. playing the piano, a wonderful pianist. The great Percy Heath playing drums, Roy Haynes playing one that Dizzy invited me to do with Jerry Mulligan and him, and then Jerry went to his hotel. It was a joy to be with him, and now they show it all these years later, and then I'm being interviewed on WBGO about what Monk meant then. And the amazing thing is, that was 1987, and like a lot of things, it is still relevant today.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dizzy Gillespie. With David Amram, Walter Davis Jr., Roy Haynes, and Percy Heath.
But I met Thelonious in the fall of 1955. I was playing at the Cafe Bohemia with Charles Mingus's first jazz workshop. Willie Jones, who was the drummer with Charles Mingus, who's here this evening, introduced me to Thelonious. And I found, in knowing Thelonious, going to his house, playing with him, learning his music, that I was in the presence of someone who was a true classical musician. That, like Beethoven, he took the materials of his culture, of his life, and turned it around into a language that changed the course of music. In the 20th century, he's one of our giants because he combined humor, pathos, wit, joy, sadness, with a magnificent sense of rhythm, harmony, and melody that reminds all of us that as long as our hearts beat, and we have some kind of a song to go along with our heartbeat, that Monk's music is celebrating that feeling of life.
You are the greatest mom I've ever known. I love you, I love you. When I have a problem, I call you on the phone. I love you, I love you. And when I just don't know what to do, you always know what's best, 'cause we get high, just my mom and me, so high, and I can't feel my face. When I get the munchies, you always say to me,
Look, I mean, tacos don't take that long. I have something in the freezer that I could just pull out, and then you could have something like in like 15 minutes. It wouldn't even be a big deal. Come on, dear. I'm starving. You want a pizza?
and we get high, just my mom and me, so high, and this is what family should be. This is what family should be. You grow your own, you grow your own, you grow your own. On the back porch by the basil, we get high, and we get high. The universe is expanding, and I can't feel my face. Can't feel my face. Can't feel my I love you, Mom.
That was terrific, Adira. And for the people in the audience, if you tuned in, the young person singing was Adira Amram. And since I retired from smoking weed about 15 years ago, that was not my idea, but that's the idea is it doesn't have
Whose
to.
idea was it, Dad?
Well, it was the idea of whoever made you think of doing that, and the wonderful band that you had, and the music and the humor and your singing was fantastic. And I just really
Thanks.
enjoyed every second of it, and still can even laugh, which is almost impossible in today's world. That was beautiful how you kind of had a great satirical satirical take on the whole thing of what they call the pop schlock culture. And you do that stuff better than most of the pop schlockers. And
Well,
now
I think being around like actual musicians my whole life made me think that I don't know. I guess I just think that pop music is like really funny.
oh, sure. Well, and if it makes people happy, I know, Leonard Bernstein's daughter told me he used to come after doing all of the stuff he did, turn on the radio and say, I wonder what the kids are doing. And he wasn't doing it to try to become Mr. Pre-teenager himself. He was just interested in seeing how he could take what he did and what he loved and what he appreciated as a kid and what came from hundreds of years ago and bring that into the now and include in the now something and a way of presenting something terrific and not dumbing it down. And I really love what you did so much because it's so well made, and having watched it so many times, it's just a terrific film. And the ones that Alana made, or the ones that Adam made, are mind blowing. And if I can ask a question, in order to know what's coming up next, since it wasn't the way we planned it, which is cool. Does anybody, Pamela, do you or Anthony know what the next one is going to be?
It's going to be Adam.
Oh, wonderful. And Adira.
Adam on the roof.
Oh, I know which one it is.
May I ask a question to Adira about her video?
Sure.
Okay. So my question to you is kind of like, I'm a daughter also. And so, well, there's a different relationship of like, okay, so you're smoking pot with your mom. Okay. So this is something that's actually happened. So you didn't have to be shy about saying that about your mom, but how did she feel about participating in that video? And, now you have a son, like.
Right. So basically the reason why it occurred to me to write this song is because, like, I guess to most people's surprise, like my dad is actually like kind of a square as a dad. As much as he's like groovy, he was like we grew up during the like Dare generation where they were like, if you do drugs, you know what's going to happen. You're going right to jail. And that's it. Like, so dad was like really strict about stuff, and he never thought any of that was funny. I did not know that dad smoked weed actually at all because he didn't drink. And like people around us, I never knew anybody was doing any of that because everybody did that like away from us, or maybe I was totally oblivious that it didn't occur to me until I was like in high school that I was like, oh my God, pot. I was like, pot smells like Fire Island. So like the whole thing that's funny is that I was also, because of how dad was as a dad, I was like a really straight and narrow kid, as you saw from my dorky video earlier where I was reading the
I love
poetry.
that. I love that piece. It's wonderful.
So I was like a really dorky kid. So I didn't start smoking pot with my mom until I was like 25. So that's when I made that. And I was like kind of shocked to find out as an adult person. I was like, you guys, okay, all right, this is like crazy. And I thought what was also funny about it is that like, I'm not like a drug person, obviously, because I say stuff like drug person.
Like, what's the word for drug person? Something cool.
So also anytime I smoked pot with my mom, it was like incredibly wholesome. Like I'd be like literally I'd be like, do you want to make a pizza or something? And it would just be like hanging out. So it was not the irony to me is just that it was like actually quite a wholesome thing to do with my family. And like I think a lot of times people think his dad is like a jazz man that we were somehow like around all kinds of crazy stuff, which we were, but it wasn't crazy like naughty. It was just like crazy out there,
expressive, creative,
like tonight. like a virtual 90-year-old birthday party at 10 o'clock on a Sunday when I'm like, nobody else needs to work tomorrow. Okay, guys.
Well, at least you're up first.
Yeah. I'm the white sheep in the family.
No, I say
You're well
everybody-
loved. I heard from Alana.
Oh,
I say all of them were different. Charlie Parker himself told me in 1952, he said, man, the hippest thing is to be a square. And in a certain sense, what we would call square, those basic old time values, everybody needs to function with those. And in a merchandising culture, if something can look like it's making a lot of money, it doesn't matter what it is, that will be put up there until it doesn't make a lot of money, and then it will be put in the dumpster. And you can't really put branding or fashionability or how to live your life on a pop schlock level of what did it make in consumer goods this week. And that's not to insult our culture, which is so far out and wonderful, because this is the culture that created jazz and bluegrass and all the fantastic different kinds of musics that we have, all the writers that we have, all the painters we have, and all the amazing people who aren't in the arts who are just as creative and innovative and warm and sharing and beautiful. And that's kind of what I concentrated on. And I hope you guys would pick that up in your own way. And you are so terrific. And people said, how did you get such great kids? What did you do? I said, I tried to have basic values, please and thank you, brush your teeth, get up in the morning, go to school, be gracious to everyone who crosses your path, and then stay out of the way. And that's the secret to conducting a symphony or playing in a jazz group or doing anything. You know when you're needed, and when you're not needed, you stay out of the way. And it's amazing what transpires when people are free to discover for themselves during their whole life what it's about. And if you think that way, you consider to grow up yourself. I only say that for those folks who might say, well, the guy's 90 years old. How come he can even function or do anything? Isn't there nasty ass old sourpuss? Because I'm still a freshman in that University of Hangoutology and trying to figure out how I can grow up better. And I realize the important thing for me is to try to paint as good a picture as possible of what I've learned that's beautiful and where I've made mistakes 300 or 400 times, not to try to pass on the value of goofing up, but rather to try to figure out what is correct myself and then be that way and stay out of the way. And it's such a thrill. I can't think of a better birthday party than having the three of you take with your time to even come up and do anything. So I guess I really should introduce the next gentleman, since we know what the video is going to be, and make it look like the big time organized stuff. And that would be a young man who just played with last night, fantastic musician who could play so beautifully the conga drums and now some Afro-Cuban music and jazz and Latin music. But he, like Adira and Alana, has his own thing. And he did all the videos for this in addition to writing all the music. And I was just so knocked out and impressed. And people say, how did that happen? I said, man, I have no idea, but I'm glad it did. And that I stayed out of the way so that I could not only have the pleasure of having you guys play with us and play with you, but to do something where I'm not even involved and it's terrific in its own right. So this is Adam Amram's, and is Adam somewhere lurking in the mysteries of cyberspace?
I'm here, Dad. Happy birthday, Dad.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting my main man, Mr. Adam Amram.
In an island that's not
Beautiful, Adam.
Thanks, Pops.
So, ladies and gentlemen, again, presenting the man who wrote that, sang it, and played all the instruments and filmed it, except for the part when he and his friend, that who was in the film living in Bushwick, performed that, and his wonderful wife and bass player and brilliant woman Yukati filmed he and his friend dancing on the roof. Other than that, everything Adam filmed as well. It was just, I think, amazing the way it showed Brooklyn of 2020 out in Bushwick and the beauty that's there. Just as Kerouac talked about finding the diamonds in the sidewalk, the beauty is there everywhere, from the great rolling verdant hills of the Midwest, right in the old nitty gritty funkatissimo places in Brooklyn, New York, and every place else where there's people. So, Adam, I can't see you, but I know that you're. Are you there somewhere?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
I'm somewhere in one of these boxes.
There you are. Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Amram.
Hello.
Yay!
Thanks, Pops. Happy birthday, Dad.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got 26, 25 hours and 45 minutes left of being an octogenarian. And then I enter into the golden years, oy vey.
I'm going to see you tomorrow for the documentary that's being made about you.
Oh, right. And we're going to play, also, Adam and I are playing with Kevin Twigg and Eric Lawrence, great sax player, and wonderful Elliot Pepper at a place in Marlboro. I guess we're allowed to say where it is now. And that's a great way to have the birthday come. And Adam played with us last night. But what you do is so different from what your sisters do and what I do. And that's a good thing, because that means you're doing what you got to do.
Thank you for playing that video. It
was called Overtime, by the way.
Yeah, I made it during when the lockdown started in March. I started recording just at my home, and then around May time, when a lot of the numbers started to go down and they started to get some control over what was happening in New York City, there was a couple of days of just really beautiful weather, and everybody in my neighborhood kind of exploded. And I just walked around and tried to stay as far away as I could from everybody, and just filmed everybody with my iPhone, and then quickly made an edit and just posted it. So it's a real spontaneous film and song, just about the way I feel about how New York was during that time. Thank you so much for playing it.
Well, thank you for making it and for sharing it with us. And
may I ask a question, Davey, about how is it to play with Adam? Because you two play together a lot. I saw you both at the Zebulon and your daughter, Alana, but also for your birthday celebration, which I saw most of yesterday. I went out with some crazy characters last night, so I didn't see it all. But how was it doing the show last night, your amazing birthday special, Adam, and how is it playing with your dad so often?
It's amazing to be able to have anytime you get to play music with anybody in a band, and you get to travel with any music group, and you get to actually spend some time on the road and get to go through all the crazy times that involve being on the road, just traveling, getting to the airport. You always make a bond with a bandmate that's very similar to family mates. So it's amazing to be able to have both that with my dad as a father, but also be able to have a relationship as a band member, and to play his songs, to learn his songs, throughout all the years. And it's really helped me with my music when I go to play with other people. So I'm very, very lucky to be able to play music with him. That's one of the best.
Well, the thing that I felt too was playing with Adam was the same thing, because he listens, and there's so many people that are fantastic. And if you go to a maximum security prison and can practice 16 hours a day, you'll be able to play anything. And you can go to certain music schools and practice and get books of how to do everything, and you could be fabulous. but to play with anybody else and make them feel good and listen. And when in doubt, leave it out. That's something that's the most important and the most magical. And I'm so proud of my kids, my young, I shouldn't say kids anymore, my young adults that I was lucky enough to be involved and be part of their lives, that all of them not only can do their own stuff, but they know how to do with and for other people. That's why the book Offbeat collaborating with Kerouac uses the word collaborating. So it showed that the important thing in his world, our world, and the world in general was being together. They call it in Latin, in Latin American music, en conjunto, to be together. Every culture emphasizes that. And
That sounds like cahoots. Is it cajunto? Cahoots?
en conjunto, that means to be, ser en conjunto, to be together. And by being together, you sacrifice the full greed ahead philosophy and get into something else. And then you're tuned into music, which is a mystery, which is bigger than all of us. And when I play with Adam, I could just feel that, and everybody else that plays with him can too. And when he's doing his music, or when I would sit in with Alana and her band, or sit in with Adira, I wouldn't try to hog their scene because I try to be together with them. And that's the only thing I hope, I pray that I was of value to my own kids for them to find their way to do that. And they all do that. So that makes me feel better than anything. And I love playing with you, Adam, as you know, and everybody in our band. When you're not on the road or playing with your own band, when you play with us, it just brings everything up and brings everything together.
Thanks, Pops. See you on Tuesday.
That's what Dizzy Gillespie did when you saw Dizzy. If you notice when we were playing, when I was playing, when Roy was playing, he makes a way of making you feel good when it's your turn. And the same with Willie Nelson, and the same with Sir James Galway, the great flute player, and Leonard Bernstein. When all these wonderful people I've known, all had that thing of inspiring other people to be part of a larger picture. And that's something that's so not alien to our culture, but it's something that doesn't get emphasized. We're taught how to score the touchdown, how to strip mine, how to wipe everybody off the face of the earth, dump on everybody, and leave town before we get caught. But there's a whole other side to our culture, which makes it so beautiful that in spite of all that, we still have an extraordinary country. And now we're getting a chance. And I've noticed all these politicians saying, let's all get together and not call each other names. And I think that's terrific. And that's what you learn in music. And Adam, you've always done that. And Adira and Alana have always done that. And that's like a miracle. And also, for those of you who might be watching, there's something known as the mothers. And without your mother, you wouldn't have been the kind of wonderful people that you are. And there's no way to thank Laura Lee enough for everything that she did and still does to nourish them while pursuing her own artistic work. That's a
He's
heck
watching right now.
Oh, that's so nice.
Say hi.
Well, then can we say something to Mom? That's amazing that you were in this video with your daughter. And I think we've all seen a lot in life, but when I was reviewing the material we might put on the show, I was so surprised at that moment. And I think sometimes, like for films, it's like, what really surprises us? I was really surprised by that video. And I just thought, what an amazing mom to be present with your daughter in that way. And you have a beautiful family.
I promised Alana that I wouldn't give a big, long speech congratulating her because she thought that would be a drag. And she's right, of course. Nothing's worse than hearing somebody brag about anything.
I like it.
As
Adulation
a
is
parent,
wonderful.
you
That's why
can.
we're here, adulating you, Davey, every week.
So I would
That's what
say
it's about.
I don't want to brag, but I'd like to respectfully introduce as a fellow artist, an original person, Alana Amram. And I'd never seen this video that she made, and it knocked me out. But my opinion isn't that important. All of your opinions are important because you're receiving some wonderful work by our firstborn and still heavyweight, wonderful gifted person, Alana Asha Amram. Here she is, folks.
Story of a killer somewhere on TV. True crime and terror, murder mystery. Haunted by the secret of the one they couldn't save. Vice we will never know, taken to the grave. Switch up the lighting, all the world's a stage. In the same movie, the sets just rearranged. Love drives us crazy, maybe not enough. Makes you rise to the occasion, put away in handcuffs. His eyes still sparkle when he goes for the embrace. Strong arms pull her in, a close-up of her face. Switch up the lighting, all the world's a stage. In the same movie, the sets just rearranged. In the same movie, the sets just rearranged. Conspiracy uncovered by an ordinary Joe. Peddling insurance, finds out more than he should know. Battling nature, fighting the unknown. When it's all over, the hero comes home. Hey director, I'm shaking, it feels so real. Truth is myth and legend, told at sex appeal. Truth is myth and legend, told at sex appeal.
Thank you, Ed. Good afternoon, everyone. A 21-year-old Palm Springs man was arrested yesterday on the suspicion of murdering 22-year-old. Great memories here on 96 FM.
Wow.
Well,
Terrific.
sorry, that was the world premiere of that song and that video, but then it's never going to be seen again because I have to finish editing it.
Oh, great.
It's not done, and it's not mastered yet either. So
That sounded terrific. I'd never heard that song except the one you sent before. You could hardly hear. That was terrific. And you did the video too,
yeah.
and wrote the words and the music and
Yeah.
played. All right. So, Lana, could you say anything about your memories
About
meeting some of those people that were supposedly the Beat Generation, and you said that's sure those people are sure different from Jack's books. I remember.
yeah, I mean, I was always very curious kid and always wanted to kind of go on the road with my dad or just kind of see what was going on, and that's continued on into my adulthood. But I definitely remember being, I think, around 13, 14 and getting a copy of On the Road and reading it, and then sort of getting to meet all of these different people traveling on the road with my dad, just, you know, being in the presence of some of these incredible people, and just kind of feeling that they were all a bunch of little kids that I could hang out with. And that was the coolest thing. Was I remember being in a hotel room with Cecil Taylor, I think Allen Ginsberg, and my dad, and then there was like a painter who was just painting on the wall, and like everyone was hanging out, and they were all like really cool and nice. And I, at that point, started carrying around a little poetry book, and I was like, I'm going to be a poet, and was taking notes and stuff. And so I feel really, really lucky that I got to do that. The town we grew up in was a very conservative town, and so I would kind of go on the road with my dad to escape and know that there's like the secret world of artists out there, of all different ages, and just wonderful weirdos waiting for me to explore the terrain of.
Do you remember any? I'm sorry, David. Do you remember any specific words anyone said to you, like Allen Ginsberg, or any remember overhearing? Or
Allen and I didn't talk that much. I remember watching Allen a lot of times, and I had gotten this box set thing because I was obsessed with this, because he cursed a lot and stuff. So I really thought it was cool, and so I was just always like, oh, we go to the poetry reading and be like, he's gonna say the A whole word like 30 times, and we were really excited because it was like that was exciting. And I have lots of little quotes and funny conversations and snippets and bits, but it's weird. I'm always so bad when it comes to just thinking of things off the top of my head. But I definitely have been yelled at by a lot of like incredible humans, like scolding me, because one thing about David Amram and child rearing is it was very loose. We could kind of go hang out and do it. So we were definitely like schooled a lot by my dad's band and by a lot of the people probably watching Zoom right now have all been like, oh, you're not supposed to be in there. A lot of that. And like, don't touch that. Like, like during the shows when my dad was playing escaping and running around the theater. And, it was great. We got this kind of wonderful adventure. Sorry, I'm just going off on.
In the symphony concerts, my kids would come to all of them, and they were enjoying the music.
That was great.
And some of the people there couldn't handle seeing children actually coming and having fun and enjoying it. And when we would go to the different festivals and dance, and as Adira studied ballet, and we used to go to all of those things, and there was always joyous people around. But the wonderful thing about Jack was, and we were only a fragment of a much larger community of poets, painters, artists, musicians, bartenders, waitresses, and everyday people, which everyone is so far until they discover Bigfoot, or we're all just pretty much the same species. Finding out that there was a warmth and a caring, and people that didn't hate kids. We always made a point of that when Lauralee and I were asked, "No children, but we'd love you to come." We always said, "Oh man, I wish we could, but got a gig, we can't make it." Because I figured anybody that doesn't want children, I don't want to be with. I can understand if they don't care to have children of their own, but if they can't appreciate kids being there, that's what we're here for. Especially when we get over 13 or 14, it's our turn to be responsible for the next folks coming up. Everybody in the world, every culture I've ever been in does that. People look after each other and collaborate. And
well, that's that kind of like raised by a community feeling. And I definitely think we had that kind of upbringing where we were raised by a community, and that's definitely extended in my whole Adira and Adam. Like we're community people. Like we function in that way. We have our group of friends and we all nurture each other. And, I think that that's definitely something from our upbringing that like has carried over to me, Adira and Adam, not to speak for them, but.
You can speak for me. I think that's right.
What would you say, Adira, to add to that?
No, I think like being raised backstage is like a whole thing. I think that's like, there's like a whole other side of things where you also see really talented people, and then you see their offstage persona, right? You see their offstage persona, which you're like, oh, like either, oh, you're just like also a human being, normal person, or you see someone that's like so vibrant and so open on stage, and when they come off stage, they're like incredibly private, incredibly shy. So you really learn, I think there's some really cool things that we learned also from being like in the background and just observing just about how people in the public space function, that was pretty cool to get to watch. Because I think the other thing about being a kid is that you're kind of invisible, especially in like 80s and 90s. Like kids, it was not a kid-centered world. Like now it's a little bit more kid-centered, but it was like we had a lot of freedom to just kind of observe and see what was going on. And I had no idea who most people were that I was introduced to because I was like 9 years old. So I knew about, like Debbie Gibson was big to me. I didn't know really I didn't have the context of who the Beat Generation were. I was like, okay, cool, whatever, Dad. I'll go to one of Dad's things. So as an adult, it's like fun now to look back on that. But
when you kids met Dizzy Gillespie and all the musicians and the classical people,
yeah,
and people that weren't in the arts at all, in the 4-H club where you would come every year, and all the farm work we did, and going to the general store where all the former farmers who are now living in little apartments because their farms went under. A lot of stuff like that. That's another world. It's not another
that
world.
definitely informed our upbringing. I think equally, it was like living on a farm and living with animals and having like to, being kids who worked. Like we would work, we would go and do work every day, and
yeah,
that definitely informed us as much as music did. And it, and I'm really grateful for that.
I also thought my dad definitely was just as much a farmer as he was a musician. I didn't know as a child that my dad wasn't a professional farmer.
Same.
I thought he was actually like a farmer for a job because that's what I saw him do a lot.
We did. Yeah. I mean, we were working like all the time, like doing stuff.
I was like, he's a farmer and he plays flutes. What more can I say?
Like what kind of stuff on the farm? Planting a garden? Animals, chickens?
No, Dad was on the tractor. He had cows. He milked the cows.
We had to milk everything before and after school, like every day, and feed animals. And then we were little, so we would do brush clipping. So he would have us climb underneath these rose bushes with clippers and stuff. Like we were, I knew how to drive like a pickup truck by the time I was 15. Like all of us were like scrappers. And my dad's chicken coop is actually the greatest fact about David Amram. And we're going to go there, Dad. I'm sorry. But my dad's chicken coop to me was the embodiment of David Amram, where he had like 30 chickens living inside this chicken coop. And we were making eggs, and eggs were the best eggs like anywhere. People come all over and like we would sell eggs to them. And but my dad's chicken coop was created out of just metal that he found all around the farm. So it was this incredible tetanus heap, dangerous rust pile thing where you would like gouge your eye out if you like make one wrong turn. But it was his masterpiece, and every day he would like add a license plate or add something else, and it would collapse in on itself, and then he'd hoist it all up with this. I mean, Dad, I don't know. To me, that was just like the best example. It was like if your music could be a sculpture, it would have been that chicken coop. But that sounds horrible, but you know what I mean?
Sure, that's great.
Well, we got to see some pictures of that chicken coop.
I don't know if there are any because we've been looking for years. I found one where there's one in the background, but it was just like, it was crazy.
You have to keep the chickens in and the raccoons out.
I was just going to say that. But Adam actually was like, I think like I was the most anti-farm person of the family. And like, so I constantly weaseled my way out of doing any of the work.
Are you the baby?
No, I'm the middle. So I was like negotiating everything to like wheeling and dealing. But Adam was like out there. I think Adam got a tractor. You had your own tractor at what, 10, 9?
Yeah.
12?
He was definitely mowing the lawn. Like, I remember that.
Oh my God, so
like
cool.
Very young. He had a tractor.
I had a car at a very early age.
Your friend gave you that car with no wheels on it?
I had a car around like 12 or 13.
That he was allowed to drive up and down the driveway only.
With no tire on one of them.
Yeah.
But Dad loved it. You see?
Dad, you loved it, Dad. You loved us when we were being bad and crazy. You loved it. He would like love, like, yeah.
Well, I was brought up on a farm, and it's just great to see. And now, dear, I know you don't have it in your brochure, but you with your little farm that you live on.
Yeah, dear, you're the best farmer of all of us.
Yeah,
I know, and now I have a tiny little like country house with like
you have
all kinds of. but I was anti-farm. I was like, ew, I hate this.
Adam came to Farm Aid with me all those times. All the people there loved him, including the old farmers, including the farmers that, like myself, couldn't cut it and I had to do something else. They all saw that he had that thing. And that's everybody's got that thing. And now with the urban farms they have, there are places in Brooklyn and places that Alana's had where I would go visit them and they have like a little, really nice little garden.
I never had that.
Of a place where no one had anything.
We would try.
So can we open up the floor to some hellos
Absolutely.
and some happy birthdays? Or if you have any questions for the Amram kids.
Looks like Norton's got his hand up.
I think Norton has a question or just wants to wave.
Okay, Norton, do you have something to say, love?
And
Well,
accepting the award for Norton, that's Norton Wisdom, folks. I guess it's microphone. He's a wonderful, an amazing person that can do stuff spontaneously. And I see a bunch of people that I've known, and certainly there's Doug Yeager, who keeps me from disappearing off the face of the earth. Doug, thank you for coming.
I just want to wish you a happy birthday, and it's great to see the kids, though you're no longer kids, but you look great, and I guess as long as I'm old, you're kids. So it's great to see you, and it's great that you've all come out for your dad's birthday.
We love you, Doug.
We love you, Doug.
Love you, and I love all the videos you made. It's great. I can't wait to see the finished product.
And James Canary, who's a saint that took the original scroll of On the Road, and he actually he wasn't brought up on a farm, I guess, but he lives in a real beautiful rural area outside of the town of Bloomington. And we just want to thank you, James, for coming every week. And what you do in terms of conserving the scroll is very much the way I found people I hope my kids would hang out with, who respected and loved other people, worked hard, were good at what they did, and cared what they were working about. And
James, can you tell us about your baby goats since we're talking about farms today?
Oh, yeah. I have 7 goats, and one's a really, really tiny one. She can get in and out of the fence every day. But I have to keep an eye because we have coyotes, and I had to give up on chickens. The raccoons and coyotes were too much here. So, but yeah, there's something nice about. I mean, it's a lot of work, but people say, "Why do you have goats?" And it's wonderful to have them every day. You know, they're so different, and they provide a lot of comic relief. Same like
Favorite animal. They're still my favorite animal I've ever had.
Aren't they great?
Yeah. I'll have them.
They have a thing in Burbank over here in Los Angeles where you can do yoga with goats, and you actually do your downward dog, and there's these little baby goats, and they think you're a mountain, and they climb on you, and it's so fun.
Yeah.
I guess it's for the kind of yoga for the person who has everything, goat yoga.
we brought our goats to Alana, Adira, and Adam's little public school, and the kids were amazed to have the goats come right into the classroom. I tried to do some music stuff. They said, well, that's okay. I tried to do everything I could. But we brought the goats in, and they were showing how they could milk a goat, and they wanted the goats peed on the floor. That was the biggest hit that we ever had. In all the years they went to school, that was the only thing that impressed them and made them scream with delight. But the goats were terrific, Jim. Did you have milk goats too?
These are Nigerian dwarf, and they have really good milk. I'm just now learning about making cheese and doing the milk. So that's the future.
They're so tiny and so cute.
Yeah. But they're really nice, and they're small and gentle for my grandkids to be around. So they're not mean and pushy. They have horns, but they're really pretty gentle animals, actually.
Remember, you used to take your kids when we would get our woman goat fertilizer, and they get out that male goat, the billy goat, I think they called him, and that was terrifying.
Okay.
That
Oh,
was like-
they were just crazy. Yeah.
they were satanic.
Yeah. I keep one. His name's Elvis, but he may have to go away. He's just a bit too much.
What does he do?
Well, we can't go into that here.
Dad, what was your most
Yeah, we can-
memorable goat?
Mom's smoking pot with kids, but the animal talk, no, it's too much.
Hey, Dad, what was your most memorable goat?
I think the one that we had when I put him in the back of our truck because we were going up to play in Saratoga, and the people loved the goat, and they said, "Come on, we'll bring the goat up with us." And he said, "No, man." So then Ignacio Baroa's wife was going to get in the back with the goat, and he really got upset. He said, "No way, no way." And the goat was very insulted because it wanted to travel with us, and it used to jump on people to try to be affectionate. And we finally had to keep it up with all the other goats. They just don't fit into our idea of being domesticated, but they are good friends. It's just they have their own world. And speaking of our own world, there's Dean Berkenkamp, crusading publisher, editor, and a blessing life, who also came in from a farming background in the Middle West and went on to become a great editor, publisher, and
Happy birthday, David. I want to say it's such an honor to be here with you and your family tonight. And it's such a lovely program to hear Adira, Alana talk and Adam, because, well, here's a simile. I'm a fan of Liza Minnelli and her singing. And I always wondered, wow, where did she get that energy to put in 200% every time? And I got the answer tonight, I think, which is hearing you all talk about being in the backstage and being on the road. This is my wife, Sue. And so you really filled out a picture for me, you know, of what that's like to just be there as part of the whole scene and absorb everything.
Well, that's the way I always feel when I come to visit you guys in Boulder and see your daughters and how they have grown up to be such terrific people.
Well, I remember when you first came to our house about 15 years ago and we stayed up all night. And I think if you were here in Boulder, our house, we'd be staying up all night tonight.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Well, I figure when I'm 90, I'm going to enter into the adult world and try and get, I recommended last night at the concert, get a good night's sleep at least once a week, and maybe even more if you could do it.
Well, what I failed to say is, of course, Liza Minnelli had some pretty special parents herself.
Oh, yeah.
And so did you all, both of them.
Absolutely. So I would like to do something spontaneous since we're all here. And it's going to be something that if I had told Davey, yeah? I heard something.
Let me jump in.
Okay, go ahead. Go, Norton, go.
You know, I just have to jump into the kids on this program. Is that I'd like to invite them all to my daughter's ranch in the Zorthian Ranch in Altadena, where my daughter has art classes, because she studied in Florence for 3 years in a small art academy. Now she lives at the Zorthian Ranch in Altadena, where they milk goats, and the goats are part of the drawing classes.
I want to go. I've been there one time. It's the coolest place ever.
They just before everything was shut down had a baby goat, and they brought him into the class, and everybody drew. So that's the Zorthian Ranch. So listen, you kids, Google it. It's a historic landmark. And anytime the Amram or any of you guys are in LA, it's a wonderful experience.
I'm gonna be there tomorrow.
All the jazz musicians played there. Everybody played there. It was a big thing for also for Caltech and all the physicists, Freeman and all those guys also were up there all the time. Dorothy and Ranch. So please join my daughter and both my daughters.
Ireland.
Yeah, and Coco also hold court up there, and you can come and milk the goats.
I'll go with you, Alana.
Happy birthday.
I've been there. It's incredible. It is like the most incredible place.
I
in
haven't been
Los
yet.
It's the vibe is unbelievable. That's so cool. Thank you.
That's so cool.
Hey, I wanted to say hello.
Murray.
And this is my farm animal.
All
this
right.
is Blanche.
Hey, Blanche.
Love your cat.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you,
birthday,
Murray.
David. It's great,
Murray,
great to hear you and to hear your kids, and what a party. It's like a in-person jam session.
Exactly. Well, that's what
Yeah.
life can be that way. And the amazing thing is, it's free. Just like the University of Hangoutology, the only tuition is to say please and thank you, and then say thank you a second time.
And then what key?
Any key. They're all
Okay, so now this is where I would like to butt in and say, can everybody on mic themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, and I'd love to spontaneously surprise Davey and sing him happy birthday. And we know on Zoom it cuts in and out and it's a cacophony, exactly what a great composer might not want to hear. So let's sing loud and let's just go all the way with it. I see Hassan. Okay, good. You're on mic. Is everybody ready?
I better run my
We'll count down. 1, 2, 3. Happy
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear David. Happy birthday to you.
That was like a solo.
Wow. As the New York Times
Happy
would
birthday.
say, that was most impressive. Thank
Happy
you.
birthday, David. Happy birthday. And Adira and Alana and Adam, it's really great to see you.
We love you, Joyce.
And with your dad here. I love you. Thank you.
And I'll say the same. I've met you face to face, Alana and Adam, at the Cornelia Street Cafe, both of you at different times. I've never met you face to face, Adira, but it's very nice to meet you.
It's like we
and
know
this is
each other.
I think so. Yeah, I think we're Facebook friends, which is
Absolutely.
real, which is very real these days. It's but anyway, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful time, and I grew up in a farming town, David. I think I told you that there were 11 times as many cows as people when I grew up, where I grew up. And my father grew up. My father was it was kind of a farm. It was a cotton plantation in Egypt. And then we lived in a small farm. Not really. He wasn't really a farmer. They were, but not the same as. He never sat on a tractor himself. He had people do that for him. But no, I there were tractors all around where I grew up, and cows that would wander into our yards and things like that. And it was right outside of a mill town in Connecticut that's very frequently compared with Lowell, except much smaller. And we've talked about that. So thank you very much for all of these reminders of what you and Jack Kerouac are all about. And it's also just wonderful to see what your kids have done, which is really, really remarkable. And you've been a great father. So thank you very much. And my life has been much better since you've been a part of it, which is about 10 years now, I think.
Wow.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hassan, thank you for what you're doing for Jack Kerouac to teach not only at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, to write those great books, but to make the young people and any people aware of him as a writer of distinction. And I know that goes against the grain, and you do that because it's something that you love and care about. And as a great active addition, you're able to bring that into the academy in a way that's really important and sets up the stage for the next generation of teachers and scholars to have something to go for, because they won't feel, I'm going to get fired if I don't present him as an aberrant creep. And not that I'm disrespectful of people who feel that way, but I think if they read his books,
it gets tiring to hear.
And also just to thank all of you for coming, and thank my 3 wonderful kids for taking the time to honor their young pop. And I just wish I could turn 90 more often.
I believe I see Dr. Harrison raising his hand.
Hi, David.
And I
happy
think
birthday.
Pamela had a surprise, so we don't go overtime.
I'll be quick.
Since we're celebrating Jack,
Oh,
she
Dad.
Dad.
Dad. Dr. Harrison is trying to talk to you.
Oh, hi, Nelson.
Hey.
How are you? I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm
you
good.
were
Oh,
here.
yeah, I've been here. I saw you. First of all, happy birthday. And I'm just thrilled to meet your children artistically. I should turn it this way. But I saw you yesterday with the band, and it was just a wonderful jam session. And Eric Lawrence is a friend of mine. I knew Arnie as well, but I used Eric in my Aretha Franklin band in 2015. He was my baritone sax player in my 13-piece band. But you touched so many bases with me. I feel like we've been old buddies. And we even had a chicken coop when I was growing up in the city, because my folks are from the South. So we raised chickens. But Freddie Red and I are very good friends. I want you to know that. And I wrote a lyric to Dizzy Atmosphere, which he played, and I'll be sending you that. And
Great.
One other thing. Oh, yeah. I think that was it, except your happy birthday that Pam started out was in the key of B, by the way. Okay, so many happy returns.
Thank you, Nelson. For those of you, if you want to know about jazz in Pittsburgh, called the land of the giant killers, I'm from Pennsylvania, and I knew a lot of those people on Nelson's fantastic free website, and I never knew that they were from Pittsburgh. And it's just an amazing place. And wherever the listeners are here, or even overseas, every town, or almost every town in the world, has its own cultural and jazz history and a community that from whence those great musicians came, learned, hung out, and collaborated with each other. And Jack's books were all so much about being in Lowell, being in Five Points in Colorado, where Dean introduced him to jazz Latin artists that he never knew about, and most people in America didn't know about, and he wrote about them. And Adira read one of those in The Children of the American Bop Night. And this is something that's a part of our culture that is so important. And I think that spirit of collaboration is the kind of the gyroscope for not just for child rearing, but for just being a human being. And I don't, that Pamela lovingly tried to create a program, but at the very end, she wanted, since it's celebrating Jack's reading this, I believe, Pamela, if I'm not correct, it was November 16th, which would be the night before my birthday, and done way, way back. They were going to have him reading with Steve Allen, and Steve was just the most wonderful guy. He introduced Lenny Bruce and other people on television and jazz artists who couldn't get arrested and cared about the music. And he played sort of like wonderful cocktail piano. So he would just play, and Jack just read whatever, really accompanying Steve. And this was an epic, beautiful part of him reading so the whole country could get to see what he was about. And I guess we'll end with that. And just thank all of you. Thank Jim Canary and Norman, for, Norbert Wisdom for coming on every week. Thank Anthony Desmarbier, the genius technician who somehow can take all of our insanity and make it look like it's supposed to be that way. And of course, Pamela, who thought of the idea of this, so I would be at home watching CNN and really be bummed out.
Well, I'd like to say something about this clip. Well, I met David because I was doing beat research and on this big journey, which is how also I got to meet James Canary. And one day when David was reading to me from his new book, I thought, well, gosh, this is like Jack Kerouac. There's very little of Jack reading his own work, and David has so much incredible vitality. It would be great for David to do an audiobook and for other people to get to hear him live because it's so extraordinary. So I'm so glad you're here because this is the vision that I had. But also, you know, we're here, we're at home. It's like every day you think, well, how am I going to do this or going to do that? And then you get under pressure or whatever it could be. Is that Jack Kerouac had been on Desolation Peak, which it was called, which was up on the mountain. And I think he was up there 90 days, Jim Canary, you could correct me. And when he came down the mountain, having been up there almost going mad, alone and cold. He basically skidded down the mountain, practically, San Francisco, and end up on the Steve Allen show. So he was quite insular and shy at that time. And it's one of the only pieces we have on him. And the gentle tenderness that he has, we hear so many garish stories about Jack Kerouac, and we know it's not easy being alive, is that because I knew he hadn't done books of his own, and it broke my heart, is why I'm so happy we're doing this with David. And how touching is this piece? It's so special and rare that it was done on David's birthday eve. So it's quite significant.
Thank you.
Steve Allen. Steve Allen.
In the early 1950s, the nation recognized in its midst a social movement called Beat Generation. A novel titled On the Road became a bestseller, and its author, Jack Kerouac, became a celebrity, partly because he'd written a powerful and successful book, and partly because he seemed to be the embodiment of this new generation. Jack and I made an album together a few months back in which I played background piano for his poetry reading. And at that time, I made a note to book him on the show because I thought you would enjoy meeting him. So here he is, Jack Kerouac. Jack told me a little earlier he was nervous. Are you nervous now? No? Good. Jack, got a couple of square questions, but I think the answers will be interesting. How long did it take you to write On the Road?
3 weeks.
How many?
3 weeks.
3 weeks? Jeez, that's amazing. How long were you on the road itself?
7 years.
7 years. And I was on the road once for 3 weeks, and it took me 7 years to write about it. Or the other way around. I've heard that you write so fast that you don't like to use regular typing paper, but instead you prefer to use one big long roll of paper. Is that true?
Yeah. When I write narrative novels, and I want to change my narrative thought, I keep going.
You don't want to change the pages at the end, you mean?
100-foot-long teletype paper.
Oh, teletype rolls. Where do you get them?
Huh?
Where do you get the paper?
Yeah, teletype paper.
I mean, where do you get it?
In a very good stationery store.
I see.
When I write my symbolistic, serious, impressionistic novels, I write them in pencil.
Oh, yeah? I've seen a lot of your poetry written in pencil, but I didn't realize that's how you worked on the prose stuff.
For narrative, it's good.
Yeah, I got the most hard question of all, but everybody always puts it to you, I'm sure. I mean, because everybody always puts it to you. How would you define the word beat? I don't mean why not time. I mean, really, is there...
sympathetic.
Sympathetic? All right, I ask. Well, about this point, naturally, we plan to have Jack read some poetry. And while looking again through his book the other day, it struck me, it occurred to me all over again, that his prose is extremely poetic. I think it's probably more poetic than that. Who else writes poetic type prose? Thomas Wolfe, I guess.
Walt Whitman.
Uh-huh.
In Specimen Days. Walt Whitman in Specimen Days.
I see. I thought you were putting me on there for a minute. All right, we'll look into that. And right now, we'll look into Jack Kerouac's On the Road, and he'll lay a little on you. You know, you don't even have to buy these pages. I'll try it. I'll play the blues as we did in the thing, and we'll see how it works out.
Well, a lot of people have asked me why did I write that book or any book. All the stories I wrote were true, because I believed in what I saw. I was traveling west one time at the junction of the state line of Colorado, its arid western one, and the state line of poor Utah. I saw in the clouds, huge and massed above the fiery golden desert of evenfall, the great image of God with forefinger pointed straight at me, through halos and rolls and gold folds that were like the existence of the gleaming spear in his right hand, which saith, "Come on, boy, go thou across the ground. Go moan for man. Go moan. Go groan. Go groan alone. Go roll your bones alone. Go thou and be little beneath my sight. Go thou and be minute as seed in the pod. Go thou, die hence. And of this world report you well and truly. Anyway, I wrote the book because we're all gonna die. In the loneliness of my life, my father dead, my brother dead, my mother far away, my sister and my wife far away. Nothing here but my own tragic hands that once were guarded by a world, a sweet attention, that now are left to guide and disappear their own way into the common dark of all our death. Sleeping in me raw bed alone and stupid, with just this one pride and consolation. My heart broke in a general despair and opened up inwards to the Lord. I made a supplication in this dream. So in the last page of On the Road, I describe how the hero, Dean Moriarty's come to see me all the way from the West Coast just for a day or two. We've just been back and forth across the country several times in cars, and now our adventures are over. We're still great friends, but we have to go into later phases of our lives. So there he goes, Dean Moriarty, ragged in a moth-eaten overcoat he brought specially for the freezing temperatures of the East. Walking off alone, and last I saw him, he rounded the corner of 7th Avenue, eyes on the street ahead, and bent to it again. Gone. So, in America, when the sun goes down, and I sit on the old broken down river pier watching the long, long skies over New Jersey, and sense all that raw land that rolls in one unbelievable huge bulge over to the West Coast, and all that road going, and all the people dreaming in the immensity of it. In an hour, I know by now that children must be crying in the land where they let the children cry. And tonight the stars will be out, and don't you know that God is Pooh Bear? The evening star must be drooping and shedding her sparkler dims on the prairie, which is just before the coming of complete night that blesses the earth, darkens all the rivers, cups the peaks, and folds the final shore in. Nobody knows what's going to happen to anybody besides the forlorn rags of growing old. Think of Dean Moriarty, I even think of old Dean Moriarty, the father we never found. Think of Dean Moriarty, I think of Dean Moriarty.
Thank you, Dean, for publishing David's books and making this all possible. And Doug, appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Pamela. It's great to be here.
It's a special night.
Yeah, happy birthday, David. Definitely, man. Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I wish all of you and all of your families and friends and loved ones happy birthdays as well, because we were all born, and at the moment, we're still all here. And there's a lot to be said for that. So I think we have to remember what Jack's wife, Stella, bless her heart, put on his tombstone, which was, he celebrated life. That's a pretty wonderful thing to hear in the year 2020. So times might be tough, but they've always been tough since Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden. The rents have been too high, and men and women have been struggling with one another.
Mm-hmm.
But with the art and music and fellowship and friendship and the good, basic, simple stuff, we're going to keep on keeping on. And beauty lasts forever. The thing of beauty is a joy forever. And that's what Jack's books and Charlie Parker's music and Bela Bartok and Mozart, Bach, Shakespeare, everybody was, is, and always will be about. And we hope if younger people can watch this, you'll be encouraged, as I think my kids are, to be themselves, yourselves, create something beautiful. And if you have any blessings, try and share them with other people. And don't worry if you don't fit into the full greed ahead philosophy. That's already an overcrowded field and a non-growth industry. So hang in there. But I guess we're not, actually, we're sort of under time according to my speedometer clock. I thought we were, are we over time, Pamela, or could we?
8 minutes over.
Oh, in that case, adios, you all.